So while it's not Tuesday, I did still want to give you a top 10 video this week, so I'll be presenting to you my top 10 subclasses from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There are a couple caveats to it as far as rules and things go for this, so if you want to see what they are, stay tuned. Man, there's just so much content in this book. I have so many more videos to make, it's crazy. What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and as far as what qualifies these 10 subclasses is, they are subclasses obviously printed in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. They are not the reprinted subclasses or the reworked Blade Singer, because that technically already existed. They are wholly new subclasses that are contained in this book, even though they technically did debut in Unearthed Arcana in the past. And they're also sort of, I guess they're more on the higher rank of power scale, at least in my personal opinion, but more often, or I guess more explicitly, these are the top 10 subclasses that I'm most excited to play. You can leave the other 12 out. I'm not super interested in those. And then this is sort of within these 10, this is ranked from the one I'm least interested in playing of the top 10 that I'm interested in playing to the one that I am most interested in playing. So it gives you a little frame of reference of what I liked the most. And I did videos covering every single one of these, so I'm not going to really dive too deeply into the mechanics of each of them. But that being said, let's get on with the video. Number 10. Armor Artificer. Maybe it's a desire to want to be Tony Stark and Iron Man, I don't know. And while it did receive some changes from the Unearthed Arcana in some people's opinions that made the class, quote, unplayable. Again, this quote is from my YouTube comments, so take that into consideration. But I still think the Armor Artificer is really sweet. I like it. I like the fact that you can switch between the different models. You don't have to lock yourself into, like, tanky, punchy guy or sneaky lightning guy. You can kind of switch it up. And I just kind of like the idea of, I feel like that's, again, at least not in 5th edition, a focus on armor is not really a thing we have. We have a lot of different classes that can do a lot of really cool things with weapons and spells and other abilities, but this is a class that focuses on the defense, but the defense is also offense depending on the type of armor that you choose. I don't know, I just really like it. I'm not particularly in love with the arcane armor that they're showing here in this, because they both look exactly the same with different, we just have runes on them, and like this guy's just punching and this guy over here is shooting lightning, which is cool, but like in my mind I was thinking more like a much more slim, sleeker armor with the lightning and a much more like almost golem-like armor with the punching. The fact that they're almost identical minus a couple of holes and things just kind of bugs me. But yeah, I haven't played really an Artificer in any sort of long-running campaign. I think I did in a one-shot one time. But I would want to give armor a spin. I think it could be really fun, especially with the fact that you can build up more invocations than any other Artificer. Number 9. Circle of Stars Druid. I've said it before in several videos, and again in the videos that I made on these, that I didn't really think I'm not a huge fan of the Druid in 5th edition, and I think it's largely tainted by my experience playing a Druid in 3.5, but that's another story. I like the Circle of Stars Druid because it does one of the things that I've been stating pretty extensively that I enjoy, which is taking an existing resource or mechanic that the class already has and then using it in a new creative way, such as allowing you to enter your starry form by using your wild shape. So if you don't want to turn into an animal, which, let's be honest, for the most part, if you're not a moon druid in higher levels, your wild shape is primarily there for sneaking, turning into a spider or something, sneaking into a place, or some kind of, sneaking and or recon, right? I turn into an eagle and I fly somewhere, or maybe I can fly up somewhere and then drop a rope. Exploration stuff, they're not going to be super useful for combat unless you're in really dire straits and you just need some extra hit points for a little bit. But this, lets you use this to enter this starry form, which allows you to do a bunch of different things. And later on, you're allowed to change that pretty frequently. You can choose to deal extra healing. You can have an extra thing you can do every round as a bonus action. Again, something that a druid typically doesn't have access to, a bonus action every turn. That's not, for healing, that you can choose to deal damage. And, most importantly, it's not concentration based, which is great because druids often suffer. One of their biggest detractors, in my opinion, is all of their abilities or most of their really good spells are concentration based. So this sort of fixes that. The fact that things later on, this gets even better and then becomes more survivable, giving you resistances to things. And then at each of your turn, you can change which form you're in. So if you need healing this turn, take the healing one. If you want to do damage next turn, take the damage one. If you need to fly or you're worried about saving throws. Plus, I mean, it's going to give you freebie guidance, which you probably would have taken anyway, so that frees up a cantrip for you. And some freebie guiding bolts as well, which is always nice. So that is why I like the Stars Druid. It's definitely a Druid that I could see myself playing and enjoying for an extended period of time. Number 8. Way of Mercy Monk. I've said it again in the video. I had played a Tranquility Monk for 15 levels or even more than that through an Out of the Abyss campaign. And while that was fun, it was basically a healing monk, and that version gave you basically just lay on hands, but twice as good as a paladin's lay on hands. But that was essentially the only thing you got for the most part that was useful until like level 17. So that's pretty much all I did. I was just a monk that could heal a little bit with lay on hands style healing. This kind of took that concept and developed it a little bit further by allowing you to also choose to harm people, which is something I would like to revisit, that being the only experience I've ever had with a monk. I'd like to revisit monk using those different abilities, having this giving me extra proficiencies, which would just add to out of combat, social encounters, and the fact that I could heal or harm people with the Hand of Healing or Hand of Harm abilities, allowing me to do extra stuff. The fact that the extra damage is necrotic damage means it's going to be pretty, resisted less other than like undead creatures, but you would just kind of get that going in. The fact that you can also, again, use it to remove conditions, which is really good and helpful for your party later on. And you can do this, again, as a bonus action as part of a flurry of blows. And then later on, you can shield, you basically just return people to life, free resurrections later on, which is pretty cool. And like I said, it would just be, as someone who hasn't played a monk in like 3 years, or really, I mean, I don't get to play that much anyway, but I would like to revisit a monk with something that felt similar, but would be still in a lot of ways distinctly different. Number 7. Psi Warrior Fighter. Well, while I mean, I've been playing a Blade Singer in an ongoing campaign and basically pretending to be a Jedi, this would also allow me to do that, but do a little bit more of the fanciful combat style things that a Jedi would do, as far as having multiple attacks and being able to almost, it's not necessarily a smite, but deal some extra damage in the psionic strike ability. And I would still have base force powers, if you will, with telekinetic movement, and then later things like telekinetic thrust and psi-powered leap, right? That's going to give me minor telekinesis to move things around. I'm going to be able to block things with a protective field, which, I mean, I'm kind of replicating with shield as my wizard, my Blade Singer, but this I could use to aid allies as well. Psionic Strike to deal some extra damage. Again, I could have a force push with telekinetic thrust. My mind would be hardened against external intrusions. Again, very Jedi-ish. And then, eventually I just have flat out telekinesis. So it would just be an interesting thing for me, and this is something I've said in that video as well. I don't find fighters super interesting because I always feel like I want to have more options and be able to do more things, because I think I would get bored having a lack of spellcasting or some sort of other thing I could do to supplement my normal combat or out of combat abilities, and this would give me a degree of variation to let me do other things, and I think that this would be enough to hold my interest. Also, the fact that it is intelligence based allows me to multi-class with something like Wizard if I want to, or Artificer if I want to, and then I can sort of get around a couple other things and get interesting multi-class abilities, right? You could do the Battlesmith Artificer, and then you could focus in solely on intelligence if you want, to get yourself all of your intelligence Psi-Knight abilities powered up, as well as having intelligence for attack and damage rolls, and then maybe some spell casting. You could really play, I think it lends itself well again to multi-classing, or, again, maybe go Blade Singer, maybe go War Wizard. I usually don't recommend War Wizard in most scenarios, but as a multi-class to something else, those abilities are super useful if you still have the capabilities of basically a full fighter to just rail on people with your multiple attacks while also keeping your AC and saving throws up. Yeah, I like I said, I think the art was really cool too. I like this sort of just image of this dude just arrows breaking on this telekinetic shield. And like again, you could still wear heavy armor and have a shield, which is something I feel like everybody thinks of a Jedi just with like a lightsaber, or, you know, maybe dual bladed or single handed. But like this is D&D, you could use a shield too. Number 6. Clockwork Soul Sorcerer. I said it pretty extensively in that video, but the fact that I've never wanted to play a sorcerer before in 5th edition and Clockwork Soul has had me rethinking that. The fact that they get sorcerer extra spells here is huge. That gives you so much more versatility, especially because they're giving you stuff that sorcerers typically don't have access to, like the lesser restoration, the greater restorations, things like that allow you to do a little bit of out of combat sort of healing and condition cleansing from your party. Also, the fact that you can swap these for any abjuration or transmutation spell on the sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell list, potentially adding even more versatility to that, and everybody's been talking about it, and I think it would be interesting to sort of build out a Armor of Agathis based build where you can use that to basically increase your survivability by dealing out damage. And not that Bastion of Law, the one that lets you reduce damage, is super powerful. It's still good, but Bastion of Law paired with Armor of Agathis will let you keep those temporary hit points from Armor of Agathis longer, allowing you to deal multiple damage spikes to different enemies just for having them hit you. Plus, you know, later on, the fact that you can just heal people up to 100 hit points and things like that is pretty cool too. Number 5. Peace Domain Cleric. I have no problem playing clerics. I actually really enjoy playing clerics. I also have no problem playing a healer. So that's something I know certain people out there like to play clerics not as healers, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There are a lot of clerics out there that can just do a shit ton of damage with the different abilities they have. Tempest Cleric being one, Forge Cleric being another. In my mind, again, there are other options of clerics that can do a lot of damage, but they just have certain abilities that sort of lend them to that. Forge Cleric being, you know, more melee and the interesting things you can deal with, maximizing thunder and lightning damage with the Tempest Cleric. But the Peace Domain Cleric, I said it in the video, I really, really love the abilities. It adds a ton of versatility to how you can move around the battlefield and heal people and do other interesting things like bonding multiple people, basically giving the combined bless and guidance once a turn. The fact that it's a channeled, no, it's not a channel divinity, my mistake. And then, the channel divinity, though, where you can move around and just heal people when you pass them. The point that a lot of you brought up after I made that video is where it says you can restore hit points, means it doesn't heal enemies, it can heal whoever you choose to. So the fact that you can just zip around the battlefield and just pop off 2d6 plus wisdom modifier healing to people, and it's a channel divinity, which comes back on a short rest. So you can use this to really bolster your party out of combat, or it's actually still also very viable in combat. It also makes for interesting builds with races you might not normally think about, but you might now with the customizing ability score feature thing. Like, for example, a Tabaxi Peace Cleric with feline agility where you can zip around the battlefield with super speed means you will more than likely always make it to your allies, providing healing to them, and that movement doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. So you can really do a lot of interesting stuff, and maybe you wouldn't normally, again, consider Tabaxi because of the ability scores. But now that you can customize your origin, you could swap it to giving yourself a +2 to wisdom, and then now you still have feline agility, and there's complete synergy with your class. And then again, I also really like the synergy of the class itself in that all of the later features just stack on top of what you've already done, right? They're going to boost your emboldening bond feature, and then they're going to extend things even further with the final ability. And again, the spells that you get aren't bad spells either, right? There's some interesting ones you would not normally have, like Rary's Telepathic Bond, which is a ritual. Sending Always Prepared is nice to have. I really like it. I think it would make a good alternative healer, and I would really like to give it a shot. Number 4. So Path of the Beast Barbarian is a little odd for me. And if you kind of heard what I said when I was talking about the fighter, not wanting to just be stuck into hitting things all the time and not having options and versatility out there was this thing that I had mentioned, but a Barbarian, for the most part, that's kind of all they do. Not all they do, but that's a large function of what they do. So why Path of the Beast Barbarian? Well, the fact that I get these different options and the different things I can manifest, and some of the interesting things I've thought of about this, right? So originally when I was talking about this in the video, I was just like, well, you obviously are going to want to use your different weapon attacks because you did this whole thing, right? So when you enter a rage, you kind of go into this bestial power thing. And you know, all of these natural weapons count as attacks that you can use and use your strength modifier and affect the rage damage and so on. So the bite lets you do piercing damage and heal a little bit, but I'm not a huge fan of that. So the claws were interesting because when you attack, you can make an extra attack action on your turn. And the tail has a D8, has reach, and then if a creature within 10 feet goes to hit you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to roll a D8 and add it to your AC. So something that you guys brought up to me in the comments was 2 interesting facts just on that alone that I could find interest in. I could wield something like a maul or a great axe or a great sword, and I could transform and have the claws. And I could make my first attack with my weapon. Then if I make my second attack with my claws, it says once on each of your turns when you attack with a claw, you can make a claw attack as part of the same action. So I could start with my maul or my greatsword, then make a claw attack for my second attack, then make a third claw attack. So I can effectively get 3 attacks, dealing, you know, maybe 2d6 or d12 with a main attack, followed by 2d6 on separate occasions. Throw in reckless attack there, that's 3 attacks, that's 3 chances to crit. Later on, that's possible brutal criticals as well. Or alternatively, just manifest the tail and only use my primary weapon, and the tail's primary purpose is just to provide me AC boosts, and that's it. I'm using my sword or my great axe constantly. If someone's out of reach, I could use the tail if I need to, but primarily the tail's just there for my reaction to just give me AC to keep me in the fight more, sop up more hits to keep my party going. Then later on, I get the other things where I can do cool utility things like swim underwater and walk on walls. Then I have the other, you know, infectious fury thing where I can choose to deal extra damage to people if I want. And then a lot of you have, again, continued to bring up to me Call of the Hunt's utility, in that it just adds so much more DPS to the party by giving everybody extra damage. And the removal of reckless attack made a lot of sense, and the more we talked about it, because not everybody uses strength-based attacks. So reckless attack giving everybody benefit of reckless attack really only helps certain characters. And if you have like a caster or somebody in your party, then reckless attack does nothing. But it says hits a target with an attack roll. Spell attack rolls count for that as well. I think it would have enough versatility, and I think I could have fun with it in doing cool things like that. And again, this doesn't factor in race, which could allow for a lot of interesting, unique options as well. Number 3, Wildfire Druid. I said it in the video. 1, it's my favorite art in the entire book, at least in what I've gone through so far in doing these videos again. I love the art, just everything about it. And this, once again, like I mentioned with the Stars Druid, does what I said that I enjoy. It takes the concept of using Wild Shape, an established existing mechanic, and provides a fresh new look at what you can do with it by summoning your Wildfire Spirit. This lets you deal damage to people. When you summon it, it gives a whole nother, it's like a pet class. I love pet classes. And it can do some damage. It can teleport people and deal damage with the teleport. You get you get extra spells, which is a big one, right? Just freebie extra prepared spells. A lot of people were complaining, and I understand it, giving you Revivify instead of Fireball. I get that. I totally do. But the fact of the matter is, you're still a class that gets a Druid class that's not the Spores Druid or the Land Druid, that also gets extra spells added to your class, which is huge. And then again, some of them spells you wouldn't normally have access to, like Scorching Ray, Burning Hands, Fire Shield, and so on. But you also have other things prepared like Mass Cure Wounds, Regular Cure Wounds, and Revivify. At least Cure Wounds and Mass Cure Wounds might be spells you would have prepared anyway, and now you get to save those spell slots, prepared slots, for something else. The fact that you can deal extra, get extra damage or extra healing, You're kind of bringing yourself back to life, or healing other people with your cauterizing flame ability. Something that people brought up in the comments, which I'll bring up again now, is let's see, the cauterizing flames sticks around, so it doesn't have to heal anybody right away. It's within 30 feet of your spirit. If someone dies, it brings this kind of light into effect, and when they enter the space, you can use your reaction to extinguish the flame and heal a creature or deal fire damage. And that just persists in the round, so it's there if you need it. You can have multiple iterations of it at a time, depending on how many creatures die. And then again, you're kind of coming back, from the dead if you need to, a sort of pop back up move, which is a nice thing, especially if you could possibly have Death Ward and have multiple iterations where you go down and you can get back up. I don't know, I just really like it. It's the closest thing, because my Druid, again, from 3-5, I did a lot of fire damage. One of my go-to moves was Flame Strike, which is not a Druid spell in 5th edition, but it is for the Wildfire Druid, so I feel like that's a pretty good chance I'd have of getting as close to replicating that character as possible. Number 2. Phantom Rogue. It's no secret, and I've brought it up again several times, that I want to play a rogue in 5th edition. Every time I've tried to play a rogue in a campaign, someone else is already playing a rogue or something like that, and I just didn't want to have duplicative classes in the party, so I always choose something else. It's pretty routine, actually. It's funny how often that happens. And I love the Scout Rogue a lot. Scout Rogue is probably my favorite rogue because it's the best ranger in the game. And I really like it, but I also feel like it has a lot of really great utility outdoors and in nature, and that's sort of the whole concept of the Scout. And the Phantom Rogue is the first rogue since the Scout Rogue that I've been super excited to play, and this one is probably just as useful for what it's able to do in the city and in urban environments and in dungeons as it would be out in the forest. And it's got a really cool, interesting stuff you can do with the roleplay and the backstory about dealing with all these dead creatures and dead things. It could make for fun multi-classes if that was a thing you wanted to do, maybe into Grave Domain Cleric if you felt like making that multi-class. Again, you could do interesting things with different races and how it would tie into that. But the fact that you can deal damage and then jump sneak attack damage over to somebody else, you can get these trinkets from things that you kill that you can use to do different and empower different abilities, disappearing and going through walls and dealing. It's just good all around. It's actually pretty powerful, I'd say, in a lot of ways. The fact that you can just get skills or tool proficiencies, whenever you finish a short or long rest, allows you to be super survivable. And then the fact that its proficiency means reliable talent applies to it. So, once you have that, you can kind of be fit for any scenario that you need to be. Also, I really like this art too, with like the hag and the goblin sort of whispering to this, tiefling as she's shooting her bow. I really want to play this as well. Like I said, I feel a Scout Rogue is really good over time in a long-running campaign where you're outside and you're traveling through the wilderness and all that stuff, whereas a Phantom Rogue could be fun to do in a one-shot or a relatively short campaign. Number 1. You probably saw this coming if you watched the video, but Aberrant Mind Sorcerer is definitely my favorite class in all of Tasha's Cauldron of everything. It is definitely, as I said, it's sort of similar and true with the Clockwork Soul, but it's 100% true with the Aberrant Mind. This gives me pause on the Sorcerer because I just skip over it completely, and I legitimately want to play this. You're going to get a lot of really awesome spells. First of all, again, you're getting spells for free prepared. And you have that nice ability to swap and replace divination or enchantment spells from the Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard list. While I'm not sure what great options there are outside of this, I know there has to be some. You're also going to get some really good damaging spells. And again, as a Sorcerer, I feel like your limited spell slot, spells known abilities, or spells known capacity, I guess I should say, usually tends to make sorcerers go more towards damaging spells, especially because that's how most meta magics work, is to extend damage twin bonus. Most of the time it's going to be to either do straight damage or find a way to buff somebody else so they can do damage. And thankfully, this gives you, 1, a lot of good utility stuff, but 2, also a lot of damaging spells. So you might be able to break off and choose something different, right? Arms of Hadar and Dissonant Whispers are both good damaging spells, AoE and single target with a control. Hunger of Hadar, a big AoE. Sending, I don't think sorcerers normally have, and you have it when you need it. Evard's Black Tentacles, again, another great AoE spell. Summon Aberration gives you a summon spell, which gives you more utility there. I've said Rary's Telepathic Bond, how useful that is, and then also Telekinesis. You get Mind Sliver as a cantrip, which is nice, just an automatic thing. You can speak telepathically to people, which is great for sneaking around scenarios. You have the ability that makes me want to make a third sorcerer fixing video, where you can cast your spells from your background, your psionic spells list, using sorcery points as opposed to using spell slots, and then they have a kind of free subtle spell applied to them. And then you even get this other cool things at the end, great utility, where turning into an ooze and squeezing through things, or flying, becoming invisible. And then your freebie Warping Implosion Teleport at the end. Just, again, not the best ability in my mind, but it's still a free teleport that does damage. So, pretty good. And again, you can still use your movement before you use Warping Implosion, so you can try to really pick out where you're going to teleport from before you do so to deal the damage to the creature. I do wish you could bring allies with you when you teleported, but, it is what it is. So there you go, folks. A lot of you have been asking and hoping for a top 10 Tasha's related video. So here you have it. Top 10 Tasha's Cauldron of Everything subclasses that I most want to play. So yeah, I looked through the other ones. Some of them have like I'm slightly interested. Like, even though I got a lot of shit from my original video on the Astral Self Monk, I might still give it a shot. But I honestly, if I was going to go for like taking a shot on a monk, I'd probably go for the dragon one from the new Unearthed Arcana that was out a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I really like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Obviously, I wouldn't continue to make all of these videos on it if I didn't. While, I understand that people expect me to make videos covering all of this stuff, if I really truly didn't enjoy it and didn't like doing it, I would just stop. Because, I don't know, it's my life, it's my time, and it's my channel. If I don't like what I'm doing, I'm going to just stop doing it. But I do really like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything a lot. I think it's adding so much needed versatility to the game in so many different aspects. So I don't know where we're going to go from here. This was a big step. Tasha's Cauldron was a big change in a lot of ways to a lot of the fundamentals of Dungeons & Dragons. And I don't know. I'm excited, a little bit nervous to see where we go in the future. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. What's your top 10 or even your top 1 subclass that you want to play the most? Maybe you're even lucky enough to get a chance to be playing it already and it's everything you've hoped for, or it's a complete disaster and you hate it. All of those things I want to know in the comments down below. And I will see you all next time.